So I'm back and I finally pulled cards again because I've been sitting on a midweek reading and a podcast episode, one like about speeches and stuff for with like astrology and stuff like Sojourner Truth and JFK and MLK, I believe. But I haven't recorded them yet, which is a little on brand for me, honestly. But anyway, and whatever. Like, I just decided I'm gonna go ahead and just pull some more because that's what I do. Okay. This pull is a little different because for the first time on this blog, I have used another deck. I'm still using the Tarot deck, so we'll still be learning some more about some new women. Who do we have today? We have we're going to talk about Mary Shelley again, Julian of Norwich, Eleanor Roosevelt, and Henriette Delille. I probably said that wrong. But I also pulled another deck called Black Tarot deck. It's a really beautiful deck. Let me see if I can see who it's by. It is written by Nasha Williams and illustrated by Kamishka Naidoo. And I most likely pronounced that wrong. I do apologize. But the tarot deck is called Black Tarot, and I love it because it ain't nothing but black, folks. And I'm black. Anyway, just in case you didn't know, since you don't necessarily see my face on here, I am African American. However, anyway, moving along. So, where was I at? So, again, I pulled 3 cards today, plus the bottom of the deck, and I feel like the deck did this whole thing again because the moon, which is the Mary Shelley card in the Tarot deck, the writer of Frankenstein, is back from a reading 2 weeks ago with the whole new partner card. And, when a specific card, a specific woman both return like that, it kind of signifies that the arc is not done, that instead it's most likely shifting form. So, I'm listening. But also, real quick for anyone new here, I pulled 2 cards in tandem for each position because I'm an overthinker who cannot ever just pick one. This time I used the Tarot deck for one of the cards of each pair and the Black Tarot deck for the other. Cards paired together, I consider them blending and amplifying each other. I think that they say more together than either would ever say alone. And then I check the bottom of both decks for what I don't see coming. So here's what came out. Okay, so this pair is doing the biggest thing in the whole reading. And I got to tell y'all up front why. Okay, so the moon pair with Mary Shelley is back from a reading I did a couple weeks ago when she was paired with the Two of Swords, I believe. And that message to me was like about your subconscious, asking to be worked with, and about a blindfold you have to notice. And now Mary Shelley's back and she is standing next to a totally different card. Same moon, same woman, but new energy on her other side. And that, to me, sometimes signifies like you are in the next chapter of the same conversation. Now, let's do a quick refresher on Mary Shelley for anybody just tuning in. She wrote Frankenstein when she was only 18 years old from a literal nightmare she had one summer on Lake Geneva. Her mother died 10 days after giving birth to her. 3 of her children died in infancy. And Mary's also her poet husband caused another woman suicide just to be with her, and then drowned in a boating accident, and Mary outlived him by decades and just kept writing. And the moon card in her hand is basically like the whole story of taking the darkest subconscious material and turning it into work that ends up outlasting you. And that's her method. And that's why she's the woman for this card. And now the imagery on the Tarot card is quiet in a way that I want to name. Like you see Mary and she's there thoughtful and still. And behind her, she has this huge, like, photorealistic moon. And it's like just kind of shaping a lot. There's no path. There's no dogs. There's no howling. There's no crab calling out the water. Like the traditional moon card is just her, the moon, and the quiet, which to me does something. It's like feeling like the moon card is not something you have to interpret from the distance. Something you just need to more sit with, just like maybe at night let it work on you. The moon's not even a sign that really needs drama. It just needs you to receive it. And I feel like Mary received it with her whole body in her life, which is why she's the card. And the 8 of Wands is where, like, it gets a little louder to me because in my Black Tarot deck, the imagery is different from what you would see in most decks. There's no arrows flying across the sky. Instead, this deck shows a young Black woman dancing across a road. And she's holding this bouquet of colorful balloons in her outstretched hands. And it gives the energy of alignment and movement. And even like in the guidebook, it says that there is a ring of divine timing to this card and that it indicates an action gaining momentum thanks to your discipline and dedication to kind of like, I would say like sharing your gifts with the world, like the momentum card. But like what I'm trying to say is like, if it was more like joyful momentum, if that makes any sense, like divine timing, not necessarily aggressive, not necessarily rush, but like skipping across the road with balloons in your hand, that type of energy, like woo, woo, woo. But this is what makes this pair huge for me. So I was thinking about it. In the July 13th reading, because I keep my notes, the 8 of Wands was at that bottom of that deck which is like the what I don't see coming portion. And it was the arrows in flight I feel like I couldn't see. When I fast forward now, it's on the surface, dancing across the road with balloons instead of arrows. It kind of makes me feel like the thing that was flying at me is now in my hands, maybe. Like, whoop, catch it. That's just like, I don't know how to explain it any better than that. Like, whoop, catch it. Like, that's just like, it's like the wands are flying and I catch them and they turn to balloons. That's just how my brain works. I do not know how to, this is why I have not, because it's just the way my brain works. I don't know what to do about it. Like, I may not make any sense for anybody else but me. I apologize if it doesn't, but it's just like, arrow go fly, whoop, catch it, and it's balloons, and now we're dancing, and that's just the energy. And it's like, because in the Black Tarot deck, the arrival, it looks like a young Black woman celebrating the street, not something more so like crashing into you. That's why it's like the whoop carry, and then it turns into balloons. But when you pair this with the moon and Mary Shelley, it's just like the subconscious material Mary Shelley works with. It almost makes you feel like whatever you're going through, it makes it now ready to be moved into the light with joy. Like whatever's been foggy is ready to gain momentum, ready to do something with itself. You know what I'm saying? The nightmare is ready to become the book, right? That's where I'm getting at. And I have been kind of writing a little thing, got a little something coming, you know, like the private processing is ready to become the shared work. And that's the part that kind of really hit me. Even like the podcast I haven't recorded yet, the reading I haven't posted yet. Like I have pieces sitting in my draft folder. All of that to me feels like a balloon bouquet in my hand. And then the deck is inquiring divine timing, which means the fact that I haven't even recorded the other podcast episode yet. Man, it'd be lateness. Okay, it could be lateness. But could be ripening, the moon coming back with the dancing woman next to her instead of a blindfold of the Two of Swords. To me, sometimes, I don't know, it makes you kind of feel like maybe even my work is ready to come out of the fog on its own timing, and I don't have to force it out. Maybe I got to dance it out, even though I ain't got a big good of a rhythm. But anyway, but this is a completely different assignment than when I pulled the card like 2 weeks ago. But, I'm also like, if anybody is reading this or listening to this and you have creative work or life work that maybe has felt like it's stuck in a fog lately, I think the moon returning with a dancing figure could also be talking to you too. Like what you have been marinating in privately is now ready to move. Not because you forced it, but because the timing turned. Take note on if your work suddenly starts to feel lighter to touch. Maybe notice if you're finding energy again for something you lost interest in. And that's to me like is the pair speaking. Where the fog is not a personal failing, but more of a, let's say, a necessary marinade. And that maybe what comes next is the balloons. Next card. So, I gotta kind of tell myself a second before I get into this. Three of Swords is one of my least favorite cards in any deck. I have actually historically removed certain cards from my decks before. Let me see. 5 of Cups, 3 of Swords, 10 of Swords, and the Tower. Because I have been times where I'm like, doggone it, I don't want these anymore. But I hate this card, kind of. And I hate the 10 of Swords again, too. But the reason why I hate the 3 and the 10 is because, to me, they both signify heartbreak. And I have historically read that as like, somebody I love is not going to come back to me or love me anymore, which is not a vibe I ever want to pull, right? So when this card comes up, I do flinch a little inside, I'm not going to lie. And then I typically try to move past it pretty fast. But this time, Julian of Norwich is the woman on it. And she's going to make me stay here. So let's actually get into what this card can mean besides just pure heartbreak. So let's get a little quick history on Julian of Norwich, because she's actually remarkable and most people don't know about her. I didn't know about her. But Julian was a medieval English mystic born around 1342. When she was about 30, she mysteriously died of an illness during one of the outbreaks of the Black Death that had already killed half of her city of Norwich. And she was receiving her last rites. She began to start having visions that she would call showings that would reveal to her the nature of human suffering. And she ended up surviving, and she spent the rest of her life in the small cell attached to a church, and she would just write about what she saw. And she had, her first book was called Revelations of Divine Love, and it's the first book in English known to have been written by a woman. She ended up living to be at least 74. And also, for the 1400s, during literal plague years, her just living to be 74 was seen as such a small miracle by itself. And now the imagery, because now I'm getting a little more to talk about the cards and the way they look. Because especially for this deck, I can tend to focus so much more on just the guidebook, the story behind the woman, and not also the way, what is her name? Sarah Shipman crafted the actual card design itself. So on this card, you have Julian on the left, or the middle, I guess, ish, and she's like small to the picture. She's dressed in white, and in the center of it, if you can see, is this like large peach orange heart, and then you got the 3 swords that are piercing on it, like more but sword at the bottom. Or typically they're at the very top, but you know. But scattered all around the heart, it looks like torn pieces of paper, like ripped bits of maybe manuscript pages with actual writing on them, kind of like floating on a blue oceanic background. Kind of looks like they've fallen out of somebody's book and maybe got caught up in a wave. And since that's the perspective I'm going with, it just makes me think about the fact that Julian of Norwich wrote the first book in English by a woman that we know of. So, like, I think the torn manuscript pages next to her body on this card are not decoration, they're her pages. And it kind of makes you feel like the visual saying that the heartbreak this card represents almost the same substance her book was made out of. And then like the 3 swords piercing her heart and the torn pages of her writing floating up out of the wound. It's almost like the pain becomes pages, if that makes any sense. And I think that's the really interesting reframe about this card. It's just in the imagery, because it makes me feel like the heartbreak did not stop the writing, but that the heartbreak was the writing. And this is so like what Julian of Norwich actually thought about pain, which is the reason why I'm making myself sit with this card. She wrote that pain and suffering are not divine punishment, that they're a symptom. And most importantly, she believed that no emotion exists alone, that every feeling exists in relationship with its opposite, that grief is only knowable because joy exists, that pain is only recognizable because peace exists to compare to it. And so she wrote about like the pain of the crucifixion, kind of like, so this is actually the line she wrote. I'll just read it. She wrote, "For the pain was a noble, precious, and worshipful deed done in a time by the working of love, and love was without beginning, is and shall be without end." And so one scholar, they summarize her whole philosophy kind of like this. So they said, for Julian, emotions can only be known in relationship with each other. She always pairs them with their opposite to show that one does not exist without the other. Guilt, blaming ourselves for our own pain, is common in a society where self-worth is measured in terms of self-control. Julian believes that these negative experiences are illusory and that the authentic self is the self we know and enjoy. That's the part I think I find really interesting. The more authentic self is the self we know and enjoy. Kind of making me feel like the version of me that lives inside heartbreak that reads 3 of Swords is, they're not coming back to me. That flinches at this card is not the truest version of me, actually. Like more of a passing shape that I take when the wound is loud. And that the real me is the one who knows joy underneath it all. And the pain is what reminds me that the joy is even there in the first place, if I'm making any sense. So it's almost like this 3 of Swords in Julian's hand is not just heartbreak. That is the heartbreak that reveals the joy that's underneath it the whole time. Like the pain that teaches you what you're actually loving is the loss that ends up making the love visible. Like, I hope I'm making any sense, but that's the way I feel like Julian's trying to tell me. Like, stop reading this card as like some evidence of your failure. Stop blaming yourself for their feelings. Let your emotion move through and like let your emotion show you what it's actually pointing at. And now, because there is also another card I picked. Never really talked about Julian. But the Father of Wands is next to her. The imagery in this black tarot deck is a black man standing in a field giving a presentation. And there's our like elemental sigils on the board behind him with mountains in the distance. And a deck is calling him this visionary leader and a visionary whose energy is about creating new strategies to replace old and outdated methods. And his alignment cue in the guidebook is like to literally make different choices around triggers and cycles. And so that is very interesting with this pair because it feels like Julian's kind of teaching the old story about heartbreak not being the true story. And then you got the Father of Wands sitting next to her, teaching me new strategies for how to hold hard emotions. And together, we put together, like, it makes me feel like the way I've been reading the 3 of Swords is outdated. Because my old strategy is to flinch, to hide from it, to throw that card away, child, to skip past it, to put it back in the deck and let's pull me another one. That's not 3 of Swords. You know, sometimes I get 3 of Swords again. I'm like, damn it. But, you know, like, maybe a new strategy would be better, courtesy of Julian and the Father Wands together, is to maybe try to sit inside it. Let it reveal what's underneath, which can be joy, love, which is the true thing the pain could be pointing at. And that's the reframe I think I have been needing for this card for so long. That heartbreak is not the end of the story. That heartbreak is the doorway to knowing what was up underneath the whole time. So listen, if you also hate the Three of Swords, if it also makes you flinch when it comes up, if you have also been reading it as evidence that someone you love isn't coming back or that pain is a punishment being handed to you, I think that Julian of Norwich is here to say that the pain is not the punishment, that the pain is the pointer. Almost like the pointer that Homeboy and Father Once has, which is very, very interesting actually, but pointing at the love that was actually there. And the way through that is to not skip the heartbeat, but to notice what is showing you. And every time you feel that pain, every time that's the pain just saying to you, honestly, like, look at how much this mattered. Look at how real this was. Look what you actually were built for, which, y'all, is joy. Next card. Next case. So, real quick, let's talk about Henriette. You guys know I'm bad with spelling names, with pronouncing names. But let's talk about her really quick. So she was born in 1813 in New Orleans, and she was the daughter of a white French merchant and his Creole mistress. So she was raised inside a social system that was called plaquage, where women of color entered into common law partnerships with wealthy white men who would give their homes and financial support in exchange for the arrangement. And her mother expected her to also enter plaquage as well. I'm probably not saying that right. Did I write it down here? No. So it's spelled P-L-A and yeah, P-L-A-C-A-G-E. Yeah, that's how it's spelled. But her mother expected Henriette to also enter that as well. But Henriette said, baby girl, mama, I love you, but I got something else to do. I'm not trying to be married to no man like that, okay? I got other things, other people I want to help out here in this world. So when Henriette was 16, her mother basically had a breakdown. And then Henriette gained control of her family's assets. And she used the money first to make sure her mom was cared for and taken care of. And then Mama got to work by teaching enslaved women and children to read and write, which was illegal. She also founded this religious order for Black women, since none of the existing Catholic orders would accept women of color, much less mixed race women born out of wedlock, nonetheless. So her order eventually became the Sisters of the Holy Family, which still exists today running schools and nursing homes in cities across the country. Isn't that interesting? Basically, she refused the life she was handed, and she was building for herself a completely different one. And you see, the Three of Wands in traditional imagery, it shows this figure standing on a cliff overlooking the sea, watching ships go out. And our tarot card, it kind of like takes that whole idea and it makes it her. And she's shown from behind, like right there, she has her long dress, dark dress that almost reads like a nun's habit. And she's standing on high ground with the water at a coastline. And on the horizon, there's like this small castle you can see in the background. The sky above her is like this beautiful, stunning sunset, this coral pink and violet and warm orange, all just kind of blending together here. And then you got 3 wands to the side of her, and it's like framing that side of the scene. And you know, a detail I love is she's not looking back. It feels more like she's looking out. You know what I'm saying? Like the card doesn't show her mourning the plaquage life she rejected, but instead, it feels more me like seeing the future that she was going to be building. And the Two of Wands is planning your expansion. The Three of Wands is actually expanding, ships out, reach, growing, territory extending. It's the moment where the vision leaves your head and it takes shape in the world inside of you. And in the specific card, this shape is a whole convent lit up at sunset on basically the coastline of her future. And then now we have the Emperor from my Black Tarot deck. And it's one of my favorite cards in the whole deck because the imagery matters. You got your traditional. In the traditional, the card for Emperor is like this stern king on a throne who's very patriarchal and authority heavy and sometimes cold. But my Black Tarot's deck Emperor is different. It's a king with like this long flowing hair sitting on the throne, and his son is right there. And the son is comforted by him. In the guidebook for this card, they refer to the Emperor as the cosmic father, and describes him as operating with principles of authority, rationale, and order, but also with paternal compassion and understanding. So you see, the energy is divine masculine, but the tender kind, the protective heart, the kind that holds you without threatening you is the energy. And this is a whole different emperor than I typically see in decks. This emperor is a father who protects instead of demanding and has authority that serves instead of dominating. When you pair that with Henriette, with this emperor in this position, it just means they're doing something big, because Henriette, she refused the version of masculine authority she was handed, which was the placage, which was being placed with a man whose wealth she would be dependent on. And instead, she chose to expand into her own vision instead. Big boss. And now here she's actually meeting the actual divine masculine, the one that is protective instead of possessive, and that lets you rest against him instead of just demanding you like serve him. And for me, this pair is speaking a lot to just even like my own rebuilding of sense of authority and structure that I've been in for a while now, and trying to unlearn a lot of what masculine authority meant to me because of specific, maybe even men I've dealt with in life, and unlearning some of what my own authority meant to me too, kind of, because sometimes you inherit patterns that you don't recognize as you inheriting until recently. And Henriette, she chose this expansion instead of the version handed to her, is the point. And the emperor next to her is showing me what divine masculine authority actually looks like when it's healthy and protective and grounded and doesn't ask anyone to be smaller so it can feel bigger. And my own inner authority, it gets to look like that too, I think. My own boundaries and structure and my own decision making about my life and work. That's the emperor I feel like I'm becoming for myself. And if anybody is reading this and you're maybe rebuilding your relationship with authority or with structure, with masculine within or around you, Henriette and this emperor, they're for you too, boo. Because the version handed to you maybe, just may not, have been the right one or the true one. And I think that's so important. You're allowed to reject the shape of authority that you were given and build the one that actually fits you. Your emperor is not the one who terrified you. Your emperor is the one who protects you. And expansion, once you're building on the right foundation, is not just possible. I think it's inevitable. It's just when it's going to get popping, boo. So, next case. Well, the bottom of the deck. So, at the bottom of the deck, I got the Sun card from the Black Tarot, and I got Keeper of Cups from our tarot. And I think this pair is like warm as hell, okay? So, real quick on Eleanor Roosevelt, because I think she deserves it, and because her Keeper of Cups energy is unmatched. So Eleanor had a rough childhood. Her mother, she criticized her looks constantly. Both her parents died before she was 10. She was raised by a critical grandmother who damaged her self-esteem. And as a teenager, she went to boarding school in England where a headmistress mentored her, and she discovered what it felt like to actually be appreciated for the very first time. She ends up marrying her distant cousin, Franklin Roosevelt, at 20 years old. And years later, she found letters between Franklin and her own secretary. So she offered him a divorce, and her mother ends up threatening to disinherit him, and his advisor told him it would end his political career, so they stayed married. But Eleanor said, I'm gonna need 2 promises from you. 1, we're never sharing a bed again. And 2, end the affair. He kept the first promise, not the second. And instead of letting that betrayal shrink her, Eleanor ends up using the platform of marriage, and she redefined what a first lady could do, boo. She would hold press conferences for female reporters, write books and columns, take public stands on civil rights her husband could not take because of his political dependencies. And after Franklin died, she chaired the UN Commission of Human Rights and contributed to writing the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And she once wrote, readjustment is a kind of private revolution. Each time you learn something new, you must readjust the whole framework of your knowledge. It seems to me that one is forced to make inner and outer readjustments all one's life. The process never ends. And I think the imagery on our tarot card for Eleanor is worth naming too, because she's photographed sitting composed, her hands quietly folded in her lap. She's wearing what seems to be like a light blouse, and she's just looking directly and calmly at you. There's nothing frantic about her body. She's kind of like at rest in her own authority. And above her, framing her like a halo, kind of floats this golden chalice. And everything besides that is like this blue oceanic like water with waves rolling. And I see the chalice as hers. She's not even holding it up like it hold up on his own, baby. Like she ain't even holding it. She simply just keeps it. And that's the thing. It's like the Keeper of Cups does not perform mastery, and the cup can shine from her, not the other way around. And that's who the Keeper of Cups is, the mature, emotional woman who has been through the fire and refuses to let it shrink her, and turns it into wisdom that can serve other people. And she set her own rules, and she was compassionate but not naive, and she was a diplomat because she actually earned her softness through hard experience. And now the sun from my Black Tarot deck shows a Black couple standing at the foot of a table, excitedly awaiting the addition of a new family member. And the deck's description says that the sun symbolizes abundance and is a reminder of the law of receiving and giving when you have more than you need. Extend your table. Don't build a higher fence. I think that is a completely different definition of abundance than most of us grew up on. And abundance is not hoarding what you have, is having enough so that the table can grow. And at the bottom of the deck, what I don't see coming is that I feel like Eleanor Roosevelt's mature emotional wisdom and the sun's abundance could be about to meet up in my life, boo. Come on, let's do it. I've been trying to do a lot of boundary work, and all the ways I've been pulling in, just trying to close doors, like choose carefully who's even next to me, okay? Though it's not the whole picture, it's the necessary first step, I think, is what I'm going at. The next step is that once you have your own table set, the way you said it, you can extend it. You let more people in on your own terms, with your own rules, from your own inner authority. Because abundance is not the opposite of boundaries. I think abundance is what makes boundaries possible, if that makes any sense. And also probably boundaries that makes abundance possible. Yeah. And Eleanor, she did that exact move. She stayed in a marriage on her own terms, got the promises she needed, and then used that platform that came in to feed a whole country. She extended the table without lowering her fence, is what I'm trying to say. And that's like the medicine at the bottom of my deck right now. And I think it's just giving me so much to work with. But for anybody reading this or listening who has been in a closing in and boundary drawing phase of your own life this summer, the sun at the bottom of the deck is saying that the phase has an ending point and is coming. And now once the boundary work is done, abundance comes to find you. And I think that next chapter after the reset is the expansion. I think it's just crucial maybe to make sure that you build the expansion on your own rules, to keep the fence where you sit it. Maybe just add a little bit leaves to the table, okay? Just it. So the echoes on this reading in general to me are loud. And I want to name every single one of them because I think the decks is being a little real with me. First off, we got the moon returning. Mary Shelley returned. Same card, same woman, brand new partner. 2 weeks ago, the moon was with the 2 of swords, and the message was, I think, telling us that our subconscious is asking us to work with it. And about maybe a blindfold I had noticed, or maybe you, I don't know. But now the moon is with the 8 of Wands, and the message is that the subconscious material is ready to be shared and moved and danced across with the road with the balloons. The arrow turns into balloons. Whee! I don't know why I do that shit, sorry. But same card, whole different assignment. That's how much can change in 2 weeks, I think, if you're actually doing the interior work. And also, like, the 8 of Wands moved up. It was at the bottom of the deck in the, I believe, July 13th reading. Indicating what you don't see coming, and now it's on the surface with the name and the face on the balloon bouquet, and the arrows in flight have landed in my head. And again, they've turned to balloons, what I could not see coming, and perhaps it arrived softer than I expected, and I think that is worth noting. And then 2 3s showed up next to each other in the reading. I missed that part, talking about the part earlier, I think, but like looking at everything and trying to, yeah. So back-to-back positions, 2 and 3. So in tarot, by the way, 3 is the number about growth after a 2. It's basically about a pear opening into something bigger, like the seed of the pear becoming the plant of the 3. Two 3s back to back can indicate like being past a pear planting phase and into the actual growing, like growing through the source position, which is like your mental and your emotional teaching, and growing through the Wands position, which is like your vision expanding into action. And when you put both 3s together in the deck, I just think it's an indication that like a seed could be a plant. And just, also Wands are all over the reading, which continues to track with the last month. 8 of Wands, Father of Wands, 3 of Wands. Fire seems to be the dominant suit right now. And, I'm a kind of feel like that's my art, my writing, my forward momentum, my cognitive creative work, all showing up as an active fire energy. And I think it's worth noticing that this month, the fire cards have moved through their whole arc from 10 of Wands, overburden, to 4 of Wands, celebrating, to 8 of Wands, divine timing. Like, dang, I feel like my relationship with fire is completely reorganized in these last, 6 weeks. But we also got 3 majors coming out: Moon, Emperor, Sun at the bottom. Like, when 3 major arcana show up in one reading, it's almost like the sky being real about the size of what's going on, because majors are big life themes, not just weather. You got your Moon, your Emperor, your Sun, the subconscious, the divine timing, the divine masculine, the light. Those are 3 big themes that people are most likely carrying right now. But again, like I said, same cards, different seeds, different partners, different deck, whole new reading, same plate, different frame. Again, and this time I think I got a little new light on the plate because I brought in a whole different deck. So it's interesting, right? Anyway, let's back it up. Let's back it up. Let's back it up. Let's talk a little about the skies doing really quick. On July 23rd, Mercury went direct, so the fog we've been in for 3 weeks is officially lifting. Say hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Communication starts to land again. Plans that are slipped can start to come back into range. Tech can start being good boys and girls. The whole shape of the sky is different now. For me specifically, because I typically just come from the perspective of me specifically when I do this little portion. So for me, the sun is deep in Leo, which for my Virgo rising is going to be my 12th house of my private inner work, and Jupiter is still parked there, which means everything I'm creating right now, I'm writing me a little book, interior building, I have drafts on my computer. I feel like it's going to be getting a real blessing on it. Bless that shit, okay? You know what? This series included. It lives in that house. The unrecorded podcast, it lives in that house. It's all 12th house work, getting that Leo season spotlight. And Saturn stationed retrograde in Aries on July 26th. It was joining Neptune, which has been in retrograde in Aries since July 7th. And see, both of those are in my 8th house of death, release, and rebirth. And for the rest of the summer, both outer planets are moving backwards in my release house. So it's almost like old identities coming off, old bindings loosening at a level that like I cannot force, which is why the 8 of Wands dancing across the road, it just feels so accurate. It's like an indication that the heavy work of release is happening below the surface on the sky schedule. And the moment I get to do movement consciously in the meantime is celebrate what's already been released. So for anybody reading this, by the way, too, or listening, Mercury going direct is not just a me thing, by the way. If the last 3 weeks have felt foggy or delayed or cross signal, you could be getting your movement back too. Stella got a groove back. And the second half of the summer with Saturn and Neptune both retrograde together is a real release cycle, I think, for a lot of people at once. Just trust that if something is ready to fall away in you, it's doing so on the sky's time, not yours, really. And that if you've been trying to force something to move and it hasn't been moving, that might be the sky's answer for you too. So maybe wait a bit or wait a beat. Wait a bit. Wait a beat bit. Not funny. But the 8 of Wands could be coming. So thankfulness is my whole spine right now. And today, thankfulness, I feel like is coming through these 4 women who just spoke to me from these cards. I always say thank you. Thank you to Mary Shelley. Yo, hey, what's up, my love? For coming back and showing me this conscious material is ready to like maybe leave my folders and maybe be a book. Like I could just publish it on my waiting for. Thank you to Julian of Norwich for teaching me that heartbreak is not a punishment, that it's the pointer that shows me what was underneath the whole time, which is joy. And Henriette Delille for demonstrating that you can refuse the version of life you were handed and build a completely different one. Thank you, boo. And thank you for putting a divine, like tender, divine masculine emperor next to her so I know what the actual protection is supposed to look like. I'm looking at all the cards as I say this. Thank you to Eleanor Roosevelt for reminding me that boundaries are the beginning of abundance, not the opposite of it. And that once your table is set on your own terms, you get to extend the leaves. And you know what? Thank you to my Black Tarot deck for finally getting a seat at this table, because Black women and Black families being centered in the imagery changes, to me at least, how the reading lands. I love when I get Daughter of Wands because it's like a girl traveling and it makes me my daughter. She got like Bantu knots too, and I think my daughter gonna get Bantu knots one day, or dreads. Like, my daughter's so beautiful. Anyway, y'all, I didn't even know how much I needed that until I saw the dancing woman with the balloon in her hand. And you know what? The podcast episode I haven't recorded yet, it's not late. Maybe it's ripening. Maybe the reading I haven't posted is not overdue. Maybe it's marinating. I don't know. I think divine timing is a real thing, and it's what the 8 of Wands, I think, is showing up to prove. And I think the pieces will move when the sky says move. And whatever you've been sitting on, whatever drafts maybe not finished, or conversation you've been putting off, or whatever pain has been asking you to look at it, whatever expansion is trying to come through you, I think it's a good thing to trust that the 8 of Wands is dancing across maybe the road for you too. Balloons in hand. Same plate, different frame, one steady day at a time. Jaquela out.